The night rain poured over Manhattan, like the sky was shedding the heavy drops of sorrow and secrets. The city lights reflected across puddles, glittering like 1,000 shattered mirrors. In a thin, worn-out raincoat, Serena Martinez hurried down Fifth Avenue, clutching a bouquet of soaked roses to her chest. The scent of flowers mingled with exhaust fumes, and the cold air creating that distinct New York atmosphere at the end of October, when strange things could begin on the most ordinary nights. Her small flower shop, Eden Bloom, was tucked between two glass skyscrapers, a tiny garden lost in a forest of steel. She had opened it with every cent she had saved after 3 years of working for others. To Serena, each petal carried a story, a feeling. Her job wasn't just wrapping flowers, it was listening to what people couldn't say aloud. That night, she planned to close early, but just as she switched off the lights, the phone rang. Its sharp tones sliced through the quiet like a summons from fate. "Eden Bloom, this is Serena." "How may I help you?" she said, tired but polite. On the other end came a man's voice, low raspy with a faint Eastern European accent. "I want to place a special order. Delivery tomorrow morning. 12 black roses, nothing else. No card, no message." Serena froze. "I'm sorry, did you say black roses?" "Yes." The voice didn't hesitate, 12 of them. "I'll pay double address 900 Fifth Avenue. Deliver at 9 sharp. Ask the guard they know me." She gripped the phone tighter, her breath slowing. That address wasn't far away. It belonged to one of the most exclusive buildings in Manhattan, home to billionaires, politicians, and people the world knew little about. "All right. I'll do my best. No need to try. Just be on time." Click. The call ended abruptly, leaving Serena standing still in a room filled with the scent of flowers and an unease spreading through her chest. She sat down and opened her notebook. 12 black roses. Deliver at 9 a.m. Fifth Avenue. The words trembled under the yellow light. Black roses didn't exist naturally. They had to be dyed by hand, each petal absorbing color for hours, until it turned a deep, haunting shade of violet black. Such flowers were rare, expensive, and often meant for funerals. But this order came with no card, no condolences. Only one instruction. "Be on time." Serena bit her lip. Part of her wanted to refuse. But 12 black roses weren't just rare, they were costly. Selling them could cover half a month's rent for her shop. In the world of people like her, money often spoke louder than fear. She murmured that maybe it was just a Halloween gift, though the thought comforted her. The next morning, New York still hadn't stopped raining. The glass of the Empire State Building gleamed silver in the mist. Serena drove her old van through slick streets, the black box of roses secured in the back seat, wrapped in white silk paper, a stark contrast that felt unsettling. At 900 Fifth Avenue, she saw the massive iron gate flanked by 2 stone lions. Inside was a marble courtyard lined with red maple trees glistening with rain. The security guard, a middle-aged man in a black suit, looked at the box. His expression tightened slightly. "For whom?" The client didn't leave a name, she replied. "I just said I would deliver it to you 12 black roses." He was silent for a moment, then spoke softly into his earpiece. "It's here." A chill ran down her spine. He accepted the box, set it on a marble table, and pulled a silver envelope from his pocket. "Your payment. And you should forget about this order." Her brows furrowed. "What do you mean, trust me?" His voice was calm but firm. "You don't want to know what it means." Serena stepped back, heart pounding. She nodded, took the envelope, and left. As her van rolled away, she glanced in the rearview mirror. He was still standing there in the rain, staring through the gate as if waiting for something inevitable to happen. That night, Serena couldn't sleep. She lay on her bedphone on her chest. The man's words echoing, "You don't want to know what it means." What did black roses symbolize? In Western culture, they meant death. But in the underworld, there was another saying. 12 black roses mark a death sentence for a traitor. She sat up abruptly, opened her laptop, and typed the meaning of the black roses Mafia symbol. The result made her blood run cold. 12 black roses signify a declaration of death, the mark of vengeance between crime families. "No way," she whispered. Her pulse quickened. Then came a knock at the door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. She froze. Who would come this late at night? Serena Martinez, a deep male voice called through the door. She stepped back, clutching her flower shears. Who's there? We're here on behalf of Mr. Anderson. He'd like to see you. Her stomach dropped. Joseph Anderson, the name she had read about in the papers, the billionaire tech investor who avoided cameras and public appearances. I don't know anyone by that name. He said you delivered a gift to him this morning. Her heart stopped the black roses. We want to talk. The voice softened slightly, but carried authority that left no room for refusal. When the door opened, 3 men in black suits stood outside, reins still clinging to their shoulders. The one in front, tall, sharp-jawed, with steely gray eyes, made it clear he wasn't someone who lied. Mr. Anderson is expecting you. Before she could protest, his firm, restrained hand rested on her shoulder. Trust me, you should come. Serena was led into a black SUV idling by the curb. When the door shut, the sound of the rain vanished, replaced by the scent of leather and the chill of authority. The car glided through Manhattan's rain-slick streets over the Queensboro Bridge, toward the quieter east side where city lights thinned. Serena stared out the window, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it. What does he want from me? The driver replied. You'll find out soon. They stopped at a mansion on a hill overlooking the Hudson River. Slate roof, tall white columns, golden light spilling from its windows, beautiful and intimidating, like the fortress of a lonely king. Inside, the air smelled of oak and whiskey. Firelight flickered over old paintings and a white bearskin rug. In the center of the room stood a man facing the window, watching the night, Serena Martinez. The voice, deep, precise, commanding, made her straighten instinctively. He turned. White shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. Collar open veins visible at his neck. Black hair. Steel blue eyes like winter lakes. His face too perfect, too dangerous. Joseph Anderson. He gave a slight nod. Thank you for coming. She said I didn't have a choice, voice trembling, but gaze steady. He smiled faintly. Good. I like honesty. He picked up one of the black roses from a crystal vase. Do you know what's most fascinating about this flower? Not the color, but the process. Each petal must soak for hours until it loses its true nature completely. He turned the rose slowly between his fingers, eyes never leaving hers. Someone sent 12 of these to my home this morning. In my world, that's not a gift. It's a declaration of war. Serena stepped back, her mouth dry. I didn't know. I just took the order. I swear I had no idea. He raised a hand. I believe you, otherwise you wouldn't be standing here. His gaze was intense, restrained, and dangerous, like a predator keeping itself in check. The question is, he said, closing the distance between them, who placed the order, and why did they choose you? I don't know. The man had an accent. Eastern European. Joseph's eyes narrowed. Like this? He switched to fluent Russian, and Serena flinched. Yes, she whispered. He nodded slowly, his expression turning to ice. I thought so. Silence filled the room, broken only by the ticking of a grandfather clock. Serena felt caught in a storm whose center was this man before her. You don't need to be afraid, he said quietly, his tone strangely reassuring. If I meant you harm, you wouldn't still be breathing. Then, why am I here? Joseph's gaze locked on hers, because you're the only one who can help me find who's trying to kill me. Her eyes widened. Me? Yes. He used your shop, chose you because you're ordinary. Unconnected. Perfect for sending a message of death. She swallowed hard, clutching her sleeves. So what are you going to do with me? Keep you close. Her breath caught. Keep me. For what? His voice was low, smooth, and cutting as a blade. Ensure you don't disappear. Before I find the man who used you. The room fell silent. The fire crackled softly. Outside, the rain went on an endless song of fate. Serena felt the world closing in, leaving only his eyes cold, consuming, and impossible to look away from. That night, after Joseph left the room, Serena stood by the window, staring at the rain-soaked courtyard, where two stone lions stood guard. Through the fogged glass, she saw a faint red flicker in the distance. Security lights, perhaps. Or someone is watching. Her instincts told her she shouldn't be here, but her heart whispered the opposite. Something about him, cold yet not cruel, drew her in. She reached out to touch one of the black roses on the table. Her fingertips came away stained with dark ink. A thought flashed through her mind. What if the warning wasn't meant for him? But for me. She didn't know it yet. But in that moment inside a stranger's mansion beneath the Manhattan rain, her life had crossed a threshold she could never return from. If this story touched your heart, follow the channel to enjoy many more heart-stirring stories every week. Dawn cast its mist over the Hudson River, a pale blade of silver slicing through the last threads of night. Serena awoke to a strange stillness that made her forget for a brief, fragile second where she was. The sheets smelled faintly of cedarwood, the air of cognac and white orchids, the scent of power disguised as elegance. Then, memory flooded back like a cold wave the storm the men in black suits and Joseph Anderson's steel-gray eyes. She sat up listening. No traffic, no city sounds, only the soft trickle of water and the distant call of birds. The room was luxurious but soulless stone walls, thick velvet drapes, and a large window overlooking a misty garden. She realized she was in one of the many wings of the mansion she had entered last night. A place detached from reality, built like a fortress meant to keep people and secrets inside. On the bedside table sat a silver tray, poached eggs, a croissant steaming coffee. Beside the cup was a folded note. "You're not a prisoner, but don't leave the room until I say so. J.A." Serena stared at the initials. The handwriting was bold, decisive, slanted slightly to the right, just like the man himself, commanding, unapologetic. She crushed the note in her hand, anger flickering beneath her fear. Not a prisoner. Then why am I not allowed to leave? She approached the door. The electronic lock blinked when she touched it, emitting a soft warning chime. Biometric security, she murmured. In this place, even freedom was pre-programmed. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. The door opened, revealing a woman in her 50s with neatly pinned silver hair and a face that balanced sternness with calm. "Good morning, Miss Martinez. I'm Mrs. Harlow, Mr. Anderson's housekeeper." "Good morning." Serena tried to sound composed. "May I see him?" "The master is in a meeting downstairs. He asked me to escort you after breakfast." "I'm not really hungry. He doesn't like people who skip meals." The tone was gentle, but it left no room for argument. Serena sat down and lifted the cup of coffee. It was intense, rich, and aromatic, the kind that reminded her of the tiny cafe next to her flower shop, where she used to stop every morning. It struck her how far away that old life felt now, though only a single night had passed. "Mrs. Harlow," she asked softly, "what kind of man is Mr. Anderson?" The woman looked up, her gray eyes glinting in the morning light. "The master is fair, but in this world, fairness does not mean mercy." Serena said nothing. The answer was enough to make her realize that in this house there was only one law, and its name was Joseph Anderson. 2 hours later, Mrs. Harlow guided her downstairs. The marble floors gleamed and oil paintings lined the walls, mostly Italian landscapes muted and old. Serena saw men in black suits gathered near the fountain through the tall windows, speaking into earpieces. The precision of their movements told her this place was more than a mansion. It was a command center. Mrs. Harlow opened the door to the library. Joseph sat behind a walnut desk, his back to the window light, tracing the hard outline of a man too used to control. "Thank you, Mrs. Harlow," he said. "I'll speak with her alone." The door closed with a quiet sigh. Serena stood still, hands clutching the hem of her sleeve. Joseph looked up. "Did you sleep well?" "I'm not sure." He rose and walked toward her, slow, measured, deliberate. The gray suit fit him perfectly. The black silk tie understated the faint scent of cedar and smoke following him. He didn't need to raise his voice. His presence alone filled the room. "You don't have to be afraid of me," he said. "I'm not afraid." "Really?" His gaze swept over her, the messy hair, the tired eyes, the loose shirt from last night. "You're trembling." Serena clenched her fists. If you're trying to intimidate me, it won't work. The corner of his mouth curved, not quite a smile. I'm not intimidating. I'm observing. It's a habit watching how people react when they're cornered. And what do you see in me, Honesty? He replied, tilting his head slightly. And someone who has something to lose. The words struck deep. She wasn't afraid of confinement. She was worried that her life had already changed forever. Do you know who placed that order? He asked. No, I only heard a man's voice, Eastern European accent. He was brief and paid in cash. I didn't ask his name. Joseph was silent for a moment, then turned to his desk. He pulled out an envelope and placed it in front of her. This is a recording of your call last night. My tech team retrieved it from your shop's phone system. Her eyes widened. You hacked my store. He arched an eyebrow. I call it protection. If I can access it, someone else can too. You should be more careful. She sat down and listened. The distorted yet chilling voice echoed through the room, every word identical to how she remembered it. When the tape ended, Joseph folded his arms, studying her face. How does it feel hearing it again? Like listening to someone sign their own death sentence. He nodded, his gaze softening for a moment. That makes two of us. She didn't understand his meaning, but heard something unexpected in his tone, weariness. The kind that comes from living too long in suspicion and shadows. By noon, Joseph invited her to walk in the garden behind the mansion. Autumn air carried the scent of damp wood and fading maple leaves. They walked along the stone path, his hands in his pockets, his stride calm yet purposeful. Have you ever thought about leaving New York? He asked suddenly. Often, but I'm scared. I don't have anyone anywhere else. No family? None. I grew up in the foster system. Everything was temporary. He said nothing while watching a lone swan glide across the pond. I understand, he murmured. I lost my family when I was 10, but I gained something else instead, responsibility. Responsibility. This empire, Anderson Holdings, is only what the world sees. The part below it is what keeps it alive. She turned to him. You mean the underworld? If that's what you want to call it, a place where money, loyalty, and fear are currency? I'm not proud of it, but it's the only way to survive the game. He stopped and faced her. And you, Serena, you're part of it now, whether you meant to be or not, which makes you a target. What do you want me to do? Stay here until I find who's behind this. I'll make sure you're safe. In the house of the man whom everyone in this city fears, he glanced at her, voice low. Do I really frighten you that much? Serena didn't answer. His eyes, sharp and cold, carried a depth of loneliness she hadn't noticed before. And in that moment, her fear shifted into something else, a dangerous curiosity. That evening, the rain returned. Wind rattled the windows, making the white curtains breathe like the house was alive. Serena sat in a small parlor beside the library, a book open in her lap but unread. Music drifted through the walls, a piano soft and sorrowful. She rose, drawn by it. The door to the music room was slightly ajar, and through the slit of light she saw Joseph at the grand piano, his fingers gliding across ivory keys. The melody was unfamiliar, hauntingly beautiful, filled with restrained pain. It sounded like a confession woven into sound. Serena stood motionless, hardly breathing. When the last note faded, he looked up. Their eyes met through the golden glow of the lamp, and in that fragile silence, fear and suspicion dissolved, replaced by something wordless human. Do you like Chopin? He asked. Was that Chopin Prelude No. 4? He wrote it when he was gravely ill. The most beautiful sadness is the one that knows it has nothing left to lose. Her lips parted. Are you talking about the music? Or yourself? Joseph looked down at the piano. Both. She stepped closer, the dim light reflecting in his eyes. If you knew you would lose everything, would you still fight to keep it? He raised his gaze, and in it she saw a depth that frightened her. I wouldn't fight to keep it, he said quietly. I'd choose how to lose it. The answer made her shiver. Somehow she sensed he wasn't speaking about theory, but about something inevitable. Near midnight, Serena returned to her room. Just as she was about to close the door, a figure appeared at the end of the hallway, Mrs. Harlow. The woman didn't enter. She placed a small envelope on the side table and walked away without a word. Serena opened it. Inside was a photograph of her taken at her flower shop 2 weeks earlier, shot through the window clearly by someone watching her. On the back, written in careful cursive, "He's not saving you. He's only changed the cage." Her knees weakened. The photo was sharp and recent, but smelled faintly of developing chemicals. A warning, or a threat. She ran into the hallway, but there was no one. Only shadows and the silent gaze of portraits lining the walls. In that instant, Serena realized she stood between two worlds, one ruled by a man who claimed to protect her, the other by an unseen enemy seeping through the cracks. And she no longer knew which was more dangerous. The window flung open in the wind. A black rose petal fell from the crystal vase onto the wooden floor, a droplet of water sliding from it like dried blood coming alive again. Outside, somewhere in the darkness, a pair of eyes watched her patient cold, waiting for the right moment to strike. The door between the real world and the underworld had opened, and Serena Martinez, though she didn't yet know it, had already stepped through forever. The next morning, Manhattan woke under a pale mist. The first rays of sunlight brushed the glass windows of the mansion by the Hudson, but time within its walls seemed to move at a different rhythm, slower, heavier, as if everything inside were detached from the world beyond. Serena stood before the mirror, brushing through her tangled hair. Faint shadows lingered beneath her eyes, the price of a sleepless night. The reflection staring back at her looked foreign and fragile, a florist who once lived among petals and soil, now trapped in a world where every smile could lie. The photograph she had received the night before lay on the table, proof that someone had been watching her long before all this began. The corner of the picture was still damp, suggesting it had been taken recently, and the words scrawled across the back. "He didn't save you. He only changed the cage," cut into her mind like a blade. Who had sent it? A warning or another trap? The door swung open without a knock. Joseph stepped inside. He wore a white shirt, sleeves rolled high, and the cords in his forearms were visible beneath sun-warmed skin. Morning light spilled across his face, sharpening the cold edges of his expression, and yet behind the gray of his eyes, there was something faintly human, almost tender. "You didn't eat breakfast," he said. It wasn't a question. "I'm not hungry." Even when you're not hungry, you should eat. Smart people pretend life is every day, even when it's falling apart. The words sent a chill through her. She wasn't sure if he was warning her or confessing something about himself. He moved closer, his gaze landing on the photograph. "Who gave you this?" Serena hesitated before answering. "Mrs. Harlow left it outside my room. I think she was trying to warn me." Joseph frowned. "Harlow doesn't act without my order. And I didn't tell her to do this." He picked up the photo. His fingers tightened until the paper crumpled in his hand. "Then, someone inside my house has been bought." "You mean someone here betrayed you?" "It wouldn't be the first time." His voice was sharp cold, but this time they touched what they shouldn't have. Serena wanted to speak, but the look in his eyes silenced her. He threw the photo into the fireplace. The flames devoured it instantly, the smoke curling upward like the soul of something damned. "Serena," he said slowly, "from now on, trust no one but me. Not the ones who smile, not the ones who serve you. Here smiles are sharper than knives." "And what about you?" she asked quietly, meeting his gaze. "Can I trust you?" Joseph paused. For a heartbeat, something flickered in his eyes, a glint of something fragile, like faith buried too long. "No," he said finally, "but you can trust that I won't let anyone hurt you, unless I choose to." It was both terrifying and strangely reassuring. She didn't know which was worse. Joseph led her down to the basement at noon, saying she needed to see the truth. When the metal doors opened, the smell of steel and disinfectant filled the air. Inside was a control room filled with screens and monitors. Cameras displayed every corner of the estate hallways. Gates, greenhouses, even the garden where she'd walked the day before. "See this?" Joseph said. "Every inch of this house has eyes. I know who enters, who leaves, and who lingers too long." He pressed a button. One screen switched to footage from outside the property, a silver car parked 2 blocks away. Its license plate was obscured. He continued, "This vehicle has appeared thrice in the last 4 days. Yesterday it was near your flower shop." Serena's breath caught. "You're saying Someone's following me? Yes, and not one of mine. He paused. Viktor Kozlov. The name sliced through the air like a knife. Does that sound familiar? She shook her head. He's Russian. Legitimate on paper, but in reality runs an arms trafficking network. 3 months ago, he lost a significant deal to me. Since then, he's been looking for a way to strike back, and it seems like he's chosen you as his message. Serena stared at him, disbelief mingling with fear. You think I'm a pawn in some war between you two? I don't think, Joseph replied. I know. His certainty was chilling, but what he didn't calculate, he added, his tone hardening, is that I never let anyone move pieces on my board. Then, softer, he turned toward her. I need your help not as a hostage, but as someone who can turn the game. Serena shook her head. I don't know anything about weapons or the Mafia. I'm just a florist. That's precisely why you're perfect, he said, stepping closer, voice low, persuasive. He'll never expect me to let you near him. You're the kind of woman men underestimate the kind they never see coming. You want me to be bait. No. His hand brushed her shoulder, gentle but firm enough to make her pulse stutter. I want you to be unreadable. Serena stepped back, trying to steady herself. You're turning me into one of your people, Joseph Anderson. He gave a faint smile, half arrogance, half melancholy. Maybe, but it's the only way to keep you alive. That afternoon, Serena left the mansion for the first time. She sat beside Joseph in the black SUV as the city unfolded, skyscrapers blazing under the golden light. Where are we going? She asked. To the one place everyone sees, but no one dares to touch. The car stopped in front of a gleaming glass tower on Madison Avenue. The sign above the doors read Anderson Holdings in bold silver letters. Inside the lobby shimmered with gold light filled with men in gray suits who walked like they carried parts of the world in their hands. Every one of them bowed slightly as Joseph passed. He acknowledged them with nothing more than a nod authority, radiating from him like an aura. They stepped into a private elevator. Joseph pressed the button for the 58th floor. Are you afraid of heights? He asked without looking at her. No, I used to climb onto rooftops to hang the sign for my shop. If I feared heights, I'd never survive Manhattan. He smiled, the first genuine one she'd seen. Good, because you're about to see the city from another angle. The doors opened to reveal a vast office made of glass and light. From here, Manhattan stretched endlessly below the streets, the bridges, the river glinting in the late sun. Serena walked to the window, awestruck. It's beautiful. Beautiful, Joseph said quietly, but dangerous like you. She turned, her heart skipping. I'm not like the women you know, Joseph. I don't belong in your world, and if I try to, I'll lose myself. Maybe, he murmured, stepping closer. But you have something they don't, truth. And in a world built on lies, truth is the sharpest weapon. He paused, eyes locking onto hers. Keep it, Serena, no matter what else collapses. She didn't answer. Confusion and fear tangled inside her, but when she looked into his gray eyes with the sunset burning behind them, she realized there was something in him she wanted to believe. Even if that belief would be her undoing. Night fell by the time they left the tower. Joseph took her to a rooftop restaurant, candlelit tables, a violin playing softly, the city lights glimmering below. There were no guards, no audience. This place feels unreal, Serena said quietly, peaceful in the middle of all this chaos. Even darkness needs somewhere to rest, Joseph replied, pouring her wine. She took a sip, the dry taste blooming against her tongue. I never imagined I'd be having dinner with a man like you. A man like me, dangerous, arrogant, but lonely. Joseph looked up. His eyes for once were not walls, but windows deep still and wounded. You're more observant than I thought. I work with flowers. I've learned to read people's eyes. Who's happy, who's pretending? Flowers don't speak, people do. So what do my eyes tell you that you loved once and lost? And since then, you've forbidden yourself to be weak again. Silence hung between them. Joseph didn't speak for a long moment. Then he set down his glass, his gaze dark and intent. You're dangerous too, Serena Martinez. You shouldn't look through me like that. Why not? Because some people, he said quietly, once you truly see them, you can never leave. Serena's grip tightened around her glass. Her heart pounded unevenly. She couldn't tell if it was fear or something far more perilous. A feeling she shouldn't have but couldn't resist. When they left the restaurant, the sky was ink black, dotted with faint stars over Manhattan's glow. Joseph opened the car door for her, the gesture elegant yet distant. The ride back was silent. Only when they neared the mansion gates did he speak, his voice low, almost to himself. Serena, some things begin by accident, but never end that way. She looked at him, the city lights reflecting in his gray eyes. She wanted to ask what he meant but didn't, because deep down she already knew. Something had begun between them, a small, quiet flame neither could extinguish. And somewhere in the woods beyond the mansion, a pair of eyes watched their car through the dark. A voice crackled through a radio. Confirmed. The target remains with Anderson, awaiting orders. Manhattan still sparkled, but darkness was gathering behind its towers of light, ready to consume everything, even the fragile spark of love that had just been born. Morning in the Hudson Valley began with a fragile light thin, silvery, dissolving like smoke at dawn. In the grand room of the Anderson mansion, Serena sat by the window, holding a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. The air was still heavy with the faint scent of cold jasmine and stale brew, a silence too complete to be natural. She had dreamt again. The same dream haunted her for nights. She was walking through a floor covered in fallen black roses, while Joseph's voice echoed from somewhere in the dark. Low, husky, and impossible to ignore, trust. No one. Not even me. Serena woke drenched in sweat, her heart pounding. It wasn't just fear that lingered. It felt like a warning. Her instincts whispered that something was coming, something inevitable, and she was standing right at the eye of the storm. The door opened softly. Mrs. Harlow entered, carrying a breakfast tray and a black envelope. "Mr. Anderson is waiting for you in his office," she said quietly, and this arrived this morning, no sender's name. Serena's heart clenched. The envelope was thick, the paper rough, faintly scented with tobacco. She opened it. Inside was a single photograph, a black and white image of her flower shop, Eden Bloom. But in the picture, the shop was on fire. Flames devoured the sign, and smoke engulfed the street. The handwriting on the back made her throat tighten. "Everything that ever belonged to you now lies in ashes." The blood drained from her face. "Mrs. Harlow," she whispered. "Is this real?" The older woman looked at her steadily. "I'm afraid so. Mr. Anderson asked me not to tell you yet, but you deserve to know. The police called early this morning. Your flower shop is gone." Serena froze. The coffee cup trembled in her hand, spilling over the tablecloth, leaving a dark, spreading stain. The sound of her heartbeat drowned out everything else. Her shop, the dream she had built over 3 years, the one piece of her life that was hers, was gone. Joseph was waiting in the library, tall and composed, his hands in his pockets, as the morning light traced the clean lines of his shoulders. When Serena entered, he turned to face her. "You've heard," he said softly, his voice carrying an unfamiliar gentleness. "You knew about it. I knew at 3 this morning. The police reported an explosion. I had it confirmed immediately. You were going to hide it from me." He was silent. For a brief second, his eyes flickered. Not guilt exactly, but something close. "That shop was everything I had," she said, her voice trembling. "You had no right to keep it from me." "I only wanted to wait until you were calmer," he replied. "Because I knew once you found out you'd like to return. And if I did, then you'd be dead." His words were sharp, final, like a blade meeting air. Serena stared at him. "What are you saying?" Joseph placed his phone on the desk. On the screen, security footage played a grainy recording from the street near her shop. At 5:13 a.m., a small delivery truck stopped before Eden Bloom. A man stepped out, set something down by the door, then drove away. 3 minutes later, fire exploded outward. "They used a chemical bomb," Joseph said, eyes fixed on the screen. "Not a random fire. If you'd been there, you wouldn't have lived to see daylight." Serena covered her mouth, tears blurring her vision. "Why, I've never done anything to you or your world." "No, Serena," he said quietly. "You were the warning." She could barely speak. Joseph pulled a thin folder from his desk and slid it toward her. Viktor Kozlov. He's behind it. The first page showed a photo of a man in his 40s, sharp-featured eyes so pale they seemed colorless. Beneath it, the caption read, "Leader of the Eastern Syndicate. Suspected of arms trafficking and organized violence. He sent me black roses through you," Joseph continued, "to tell me he'd found a weakness in my system. He used you to deliver that message, making me feel like I'd lost control." "And have you?" she asked. He looked at her. "I never lose control. But he made one mistake." "What mistake? He made me care about you." Serena froze. His face seemed almost human in the soft golden light, yet his eyes remained as unreadable as deep water. "What does that mean?" "It means I won't let him touch you again, even if I have to burn this city to the ground." She took an instinctive step back. "You're talking about revenge." "No," he said. "I'm talking about balance. In my world, every loss demands its price, and he'll pay." His voice didn't rise, but every word carried the cold precision of power and danger. Serena wanted to argue, to plead for reason, but she knew it was useless. Joseph Anderson wasn't a man who listened. He was a man who decided. That afternoon, Serena wandered the gardens behind the mansion. The sky had turned silver gray, the air sharp with the smell of fallen maple leaves. She sat on a stone bench by the pond, watching the light ripple across the surface. Beneath that stillness, she imagined unseen depths, the same secrets Joseph hid behind his calm exterior. Footsteps approached behind her. She didn't turn. She already knew. "Mrs. Harlow said you skipped lunch," Joseph said. "You keep tabs on when I eat now." "No," he replied, stopping beside her. "I care." She looked up at him, eyes hard. "Care or control?" He exhaled softly and sat next to her. "Both, but not the way you think." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver ring, simple, unadorned, engraved inside with Latin words, "Fortuna audaces juvat." Fortune favors the brave. "What's this?" she asked. "Wear it. It's a symbol of protection. You believe in luck." "No." His gaze stayed on the pond. "I believe in choices." The quiet conviction in his tone made something stir inside her, something she didn't want to name. That night, a storm rolled in. Wind lashed the windows. Thunder cracked the sky. Serena was preparing for bed when she heard voices in the hallway. She opened the door a sliver. Mrs. Harlow's voice was low. "They've found the man, sir." Joseph's reply was clipped urgent. "Take him to the East Wing." "No one tells Serena." Her heart stopped. The man. Without thinking, she slipped out, keeping to the shadows. The corridor was dim, the only light coming from the reflection of a nearby portrait. She crept down the spiral stairs. From behind the door of the East Wing, voices drifted out. He said someone else was inside the flower shop before the explosion. Serena recognized Joseph's voice. Then another weak trembling. I only saw a man. Gray coat, silver hair, carrying a black bag. Didn't see his face. But he said, the girl had played her part. Played her part. Serena's skin went cold. She couldn't hear the rest. Only Joseph's curt order. Take him out. I'll deal with Kozlov later. When she turned to leave, a hand shot out and pulled her into the shadows. You shouldn't be here. It was Mrs. Harlow. Her eyes glinted under the dim light. She whispered that Mr. Anderson won't be pleased if he knows you heard that. And trust me, some truths don't make you safer when you know them. You know something, Serena said, her voice shaking. That man said I played my part. What did he mean? Mrs. Harlow was silent for a long time before she spoke. You're the key, Serena. You weren't caught in this by accident. Someone chose you. Chose me. Yes. And if I'm right, it wasn't Kozlov. Before Serena could ask more, the woman was gone. Her figure melting into the dark corridor like a shadow swallowed by night. She couldn't sleep after that. Mrs. Harlow's words echoed in her mind. Someone chose you, who, and why? She searched the drawers, desperate for something, anything. Joseph had confiscated her phone, but she found an old one tucked away in a cabinet. She powered it on. The screen lit up, revealing dozens of unread messages. The last one sent from an unknown number, just 30 minutes before that fateful phone call froze her in place. Serena, don't take that order. It isn't random. Her breath caught. The timestamp read 7:30 p.m., half an hour before the call, for 12 black roses. Someone had known. Someone had tried to warn her. She curled up on the bed, fear prickling through her skin. This wasn't a coincidence. Someone had set the pieces before she ever entered Joseph Anderson's world. Outside, thunder-rumbled wind howled against the glass. She looked toward the garden, and between flashes of lightning, she saw him, a dark figure standing beneath the old maple tree, unmoving, staring up at her window. For the first time since stepping into this mansion, Serena realized she wasn't just a victim of fate. She was part of a design, a game crafted by unseen hands, where every move had already been played. And if Mrs. Harlow was right, then the one who set the board might be closer than she imagined. So close she could hear his breath when the door opened behind her, and a quiet voice said almost tenderly, "Serena, you're still awake." She turned. Joseph stood there, shirt half buttoned, firelight flickering in his eyes, soft yet frighteningly unreadable. And in that fragile instant, Serena no longer knew whether the man before her was her protector or the one who had started the fire that turned her life to ashes. The morning broke in a cold shade of silver gray, as though even the sun hesitated to shine upon the Anderson mansion. Serena sat on the stone steps outside, her eyes hollow after a sleepless night. The tea in her hands had long gone cold, but she made no effort to replace it. A faint breeze drifted from the lavender garden behind the house, gentle, fragrant, and powerless to chase away the emptiness in her chest. Joseph hadn't come to his room the previous night. He had told her there was an urgent meeting with his security team, and Mrs. Harlow had advised her to rest. But Serena knew better. When a man like Joseph Anderson said meeting, it usually meant someone was about to disappear somewhere in the world. She closed her eyes. The image of her flower shop, Eden Bloom, engulfed in flames, still clung to her mind. But what haunted her even more were Mrs. Harlow's words. "Someone chose you long before this began. Who could have chosen her, an ordinary florist, for such a bloody game?" The sound of an engine interrupted her thoughts. A black SUV rolled up to the gate. Joseph stepped out. Sleeves rolled high, the white of his shirt marred by faint streaks of dried blood. He looked exhausted, but his eyes, sharp and gray, still gleamed with that ruthless precision. "Where were you?" she asked. "Finishing some unfinished business," he said evenly. "What does that mean?" Joseph's gaze held hers, calm, cold, with a trace of something weary underneath. "It means the man who set the trap for you won't get the chance to do it again." Serena's breath caught. "You killed him." "No need for that word." "Let's say I removed a threat." Her voice trembled. "You did that without even asking me, without letting me know why he betrayed me." Joseph gave a faint, bitter smile. "Serena, in this world, why doesn't it matter? Only when and how. He chose the wrong side and he paid the price." "Who are you talking about?" Joseph hesitated for a moment before answering quietly, Andy Kowalski. The name hit her like lightning. "Peter. From the flower shop, yes. No, that's impossible. Peter was kind. He helped me with deliveries and protected me when customers got aggressive. He's been selling your information to Viktor Kozlov for 8 months. Joseph laid a folder on the patio table. Photographs spilled across the wood, each one a dagger. Serena's hands shook as she picked them up. Peter, standing in a parking lot, shaking hands with a silver-haired man. An envelope passes between them. Another shot Peter secretly photographing her shop, and even Serena arranging roses in the window. "No," she whispered, voice breaking. "You forged these. You're trying to make me believe I'm just another pawn in your dirty war." Joseph said nothing. His eyes were steady, not cruel, but filled with cold pity. "I know you want to believe in people's goodness. But the world doesn't run on kindness, Serena." "That's easy for you to say," she snapped. "You've never been betrayed." Joseph gave a short, mirthless laugh that sounded like it hurt. "On the contrary, I know it better than anyone." The air fell still. Serena looked at him as if seeing him for the first time. Not the billionaire with power and command, but a man stripped bare, carrying old scars he rarely let surface. You were betrayed, she asked softly. He turned away, eyes fixed on the rain-damp trees beyond the courtyard. The man I trusted most sold my father out. His death was the price I paid for believing in loyalty. He paused, his voice low. Since that day, I stopped trusting feelings. I only trust evidence. Serena bowed her head. She knew loss, but she had never lost her faith in humanity until now. Quietly, she asked, "What did you do to Peter?" "He's being held at one of my security sites. I want you to see him." That afternoon, they left the mansion. The car cut through the misty roads of upstate New York in silence. Outside, the forests blurred by in streaks of dark green and gray. Inside, the silence was thick, heavy with what neither dared to say. The place before her didn't look like a prison when they arrived. It looked like an abandoned warehouse, airless, fortified without any sign of life. Joseph walked ahead, unlocking a steel door with his fingerprint. They descended a metal staircase where fluorescent light flickered against concrete walls. Cold, colorless, sterile. At the end of the corridor, a door opened. Peter sat inside, hands bound, face bruised, eyes wide and terrified. He looked nothing like the gentle boy she remembered. When he saw Serena, he leapt to his feet. "Serena, I swear I never meant to hurt you," her voice shook. "Then why? Why would you do it?" Peter's gaze darted to Joseph, then back to her. "I didn't have a choice. They had my sister. Victor said if I didn't cooperate, she'd die. I only passed on small details, deliveries, and schedules, but I didn't know they would blow up the shop." Serena felt her throat close up. Her tears came fast, hot, and angry. "You could have told me I would have helped. No one could help." Peter's voice cracked. "You don't understand. In that world, everyone has something to lose. And I already lost everything." Joseph remained silent, hands in his pockets, gaze like ice. A touching story. But it doesn't change the fact that your betrayal cost lives. Peter turned to Serena again, desperation in his voice. "Listen to me, Victor isn't just after him. He's after you. Because you're not just some random florist." Serena froze. "What do you mean I heard him on the phone?" Peter said. "He said, the best part is she doesn't even know who she is." "Serena, do you really think you're just ordinary?" Joseph stepped forward, voice like steel. "Enough." Peter's voice rose to a shout. "What's wrong?" "Anderson, afraid she'll learn the truth. Scared she'll find out who her father was. Or that you're the one who erased his name from every financial record 10 years ago." Serena went pale. She turned to Joseph, trembling. "He's lying." "Right," Joseph said nothing. Just one heartbeat of silence, but it was enough. Peter laughed hoarsely, brokenly. "See? You're just another pawn, Serena. The final piece of an old debt. He hid you to keep control the same way he controls this entire city." Serena stumbled backward, shaking her head, then ran for the door. Joseph followed, reaching out, but she pulled away. "Please don't touch me." "Serena, listen. Listen to what?" "Was everything about me about my father?" "A lie." Joseph caught her shoulders, his voice cracking between pain and control. "I didn't know it would come back like this. I didn't know Victor would use you to settle a score from the past. I would never have let you step into my life if I had." "So that's your idea of love, lies, and control." She shoved him off and fled up the stairs, tears cutting down her cheeks. Behind her, Joseph whispered, voice raw and low. "I didn't hide the truth to control you. I hid it to keep you." But Serena didn't look back. She stared out the window on the ride home as the rain blurred the world into gray streaks. Fragments of her childhood flickered through her mind. Growing up in an orphanage, the faint memory of a man's rough, calloused hands that once patted her hair gently. Her father, Miguel Martinez. 10 years ago, a construction engineer was accused of embezzlement in the Brooklyn Bridge project. He was charged then, vanished. They said he'd taken his own life. Serena had never believed it, but the case had been quietly buried. The files she remembered now belonged to Anderson Holdings. And suddenly everything made sense. Nothing had been a coincidence. Nothing had been fate. There were only old debts and payments made in blood. That night, the mansion was silent. Joseph stood alone in his study, staring at a framed photograph on his desk. An old picture of him with his father standing beside another man, Miguel Martinez. He closed his eyes, memories crashing back the night the building collapsed, his father's death beneath the rubble, and every piece of evidence pointing to one name, Martinez. He had hated that name for years, until he met Serena. And now he had to face the truth that the woman he loved was the daughter of the man he had once vowed to destroy. The door opened. Mrs. Harlow entered holding a phone. "Sir, a message just came in from Victor Kozlov." Joseph looked up sharply. "What did he say?" She hesitated, then read aloud, "Your past has returned, and it wears the face of the woman you love." Joseph's hand tightened around his glass until it shattered. Red wine spilled across the carpet, dark, spreading like blood. Serena stood by the window in the next room, staring out into the mist-drenched garden. On her finger glimmered the silver ring, engraved with Fortuna Audaces Uvat. She turned it slowly, the metal catching the faint light. She was no longer the naive girl who believed that goodness alone could save her. She knew now to uncover the truth, she would have to walk straight into the heart of danger Joseph Anderson's world. Thunder rolled across the valley, tearing the sky in two. And in the fragile space between light and shadow, two souls, one burdened by guilt, the other by unanswered questions, were bound together by a destiny neither could escape. As the storm raged outside, Serena made a silent vow. If Joseph had hidden the truth from her, then she would be the one to make him face it. Morning settled over New York in a pale shroud of mist. From the upper floors of Anderson Tower, the skyline floated ghost-like in a sea of white. The glass buildings reflecting a dim, cold light, a mirror to Serena Martinez's state of mind. She stood by the wide window, her lengthy hair lifted gently by the draft that seeped in. In her hands was the file she had taken from Joseph's office the night before, the file that confirmed every fear that had haunted her. Her father, Miguel Martinez, hadn't died in the financial scandal 10 years ago. He had been framed. And the man who signed the final order freezing his assets was Joseph Anderson, at just 26, newly appointed CEO. Now standing in his luxurious office high above Manhattan, Serena felt as though her entire world had been built on a cruel joke. She had fallen in love with the man who destroyed her family, or rather, the man who once killed her father to protect his empire. The sound of a door opening stirred the silence. "I knew you'd be here." Joseph's voice came low and tired, yet edged with caution. He stepped inside, shirt slightly unbuttoned, a cup of untouched coffee in his hand. The faint morning light carved his features sharp, weary, and marked by something unspoken, like an old wound that refused to heal. "You didn't lock the door," Serena said without turning. "You're not afraid I'll uncover more of your secrets?" A humorless smile crossed his lips. "If you wanted to find them, you already would have." "I didn't think you needed more pain." She spun around, eyes red but steady. "Pain? You think I could hurt more than this? You've already taken everything my father shop and trust." Joseph set the cup down and moved closer. "I didn't kill your father, Serena. I swear. It all happened when I was too young, too blind to see that justice doesn't always live in numbers. Then who made him disappear? Who turned him into a criminal and erased him from existence?" Joseph was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was almost a whisper. "I don't know. You're lying. I wish I were." His gray eyes lifted to hers, heavy with regret. "Miguel Martinez wasn't just an engineer. He was my father's partner. They co-signed the Brooklyn Bridge expansion project. But someone falsified the ledgers, diverted the funds into hidden accounts. When the investigation began, every trace of evidence pointed to him. And you believed that I had to." Serena let out a broken laugh. "Because it saved your father. And you did it by destroying mine. I didn't learn the truth until after he vanished." Joseph said, voice dropping lower. "I spent years investigating what really happened. And I discovered something." He paused, his gaze holding hers. "Your father isn't dead, Serena." Her breath caught. "What?" "He's alive under a different name, but he doesn't want you to find him." Serena stared, disbelief flooding her. "You've found him?" Joseph nodded slowly. 3 years ago, in San Diego. He runs a small construction firm under the name Michael Harris. He knew I had found him, but he refused to meet. He said, "I'm not the man I once was. My daughter deserves a clean start, not stained by her father's sins." Tears welled in her eyes, spilling freely down her cheeks. "You've known all this time, 3 years, and you still let me live believing he was dead." Joseph's hands clenched, but his tone remained calm. "I didn't want to trap you in the cycle of vengeance. He loves you, Serena. He didn't want you dragged into his darkness. I kept his secret to protect you, not deceive you." "Protect me," she choked out. "You call that protection?" "I spent half my life wishing for one more chance, one moment to ask him why he left me. And you, the only person who could give that to me, stayed silent." Joseph stepped forward and reached for her shoulders, but she pulled away. "Please don't touch me. Everything you do is about control. You hide behind the word love, but you're afraid I'd walk away if I knew the truth." He didn't deny it. He stood there, eyes gray and still as a lake before a storm. "You're right," he said softly. "I am afraid because I have something to lose for the first time." The words pierced her like a knife, painful, sincere, and impossible to ignore. But anger still burned too hot. She turned away, her voice trembling. "I need to be alone." He said, "I won't stop you," his tone low, heavy. "Just remember, not every secret is born from deceit. Some are made to keep the people we love alive." Serena didn't answer. Her heels clicked against the marble as she left, each step echoing like the closing of a door that might never reopen. That afternoon, Serena boarded a southbound train to San Diego. In her hand was a small scrap of paper with an address written on it, one she had found tucked inside Joseph's file, though he didn't know she had it. Outside, the world streaked by in muted shades of green and gray. Inside her chest, memories and truths tangled like wounds that refused to close. When the train finally stopped, Serena stepped out into the soft golden light of late afternoon. She followed the narrow streets until the air turned briny with the scent of the ocean. At last, she stopped in front of a modest white wooden house with a simple sign, Harris Construction. Before she could knock, the door opened. A man in his 50s stood there, silver hair, gentle eyes shadowed with remorse. He looked at her for a long time before speaking a single word. "Serena." It was all it took for her world to shatter. "Dad." She ran into his arms. The warmth was so familiar it stole her breath. They stood there unmoving, bathed in the fading sunlight. No words, just the silence of a decade finally breaking. Later, they sat in the small living room. Serena looked around. Photos lined the table. A little girl in a floral dress. Birthday cards faded with time, all carefully framed. "You kept them?" she asked, voice trembling. "I never stopped watching over you," he said, his smile quivering. "I didn't want to drag you into my darkness." "What darkness?" "The night the bridge collapsed, I didn't steal a thing. Someone on the board did and pinned it on me. I had evidence, but before I could reveal it, it was taken by a man named Anderson." Serena's hands tightened. "Joseph." "No. His father." She froze. Joseph's father, Miguel, nodded. "Edward Anderson ordered the freeze. Joseph was only executing the paperwork. He had no idea what really happened. When Edward died, Joseph started looking for me." Serena went still. The truth unraveled like the seams of a long-hidden wound. The man she hated might not have been the enemy. He might have been carrying the guilt of another. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. "Because I knew that if you ever met him, you'd fall in love with him." Serena let out a tearful laugh. "You were right." Miguel's eyes softened with sorrow. "And I knew that love would break your heart." That night, Serena sat alone on the beach in front of the house, listening to the slow rhythm of the waves. The air was cool, but not cruel. In that vast quiet, her thoughts drifted back to Joseph, to his voice, his eyes when he'd said, "I'm afraid of losing you." Now she understood they stood on opposite sides of the same fear. He feared losing her. She feared losing faith in him. When the wind picked up, she rose and pulled out her phone. After a few rings, his voice came through, low, rough, exhausted. "I knew you'd call," he said. "You were right. You met him?" "Yes, and you know the truth now." "I do." She paused. "But I don't know what to do with it yet." For a moment only, his breathing filled the silence. Then Joseph said, "I'm in Manhattan. When you're ready, come back." But Serena Victor knows. Her pulse quickened. Knows that you're alive. And that your father is too. He won't stop now. Serena tightened her grip on the phone. "Then I won't run anymore." "Serena, you once told me fortune favors the brave, didn't you? It may be time I find out if I'm brave enough." There was a long pause on the other end. Then Joseph's voice came deep and steady, almost a vow. "I'll go for you even if I have to walk through hell." A black helicopter descended onto the grass when Serena stepped outside the next morning. Joseph climbed out the rotor wind, whipping his shirt and hair. She saw something she'd never seen in his eyes, a fragile mix of fear, hope, and love. She walked toward him. They didn't speak. They looked at each other. Two people stripped bare of lies and vengeance with only the truth between them. Joseph extended his hand. "Let's go home, Serena." She stared at him momentarily, then placed her hand in his warm, intense trembling, slightly in the wind. As the helicopter lifted off the San Diego coast, Serena realized she was returning to where everything began, but this time not to escape. She was going back to end it. Beneath the ashes of the past, love and hatred had become indistinguishable, two fires burning from the same spark. And only time would tell, when the embers finally cooled, whether something new would bloom. Or would they be just two souls who burned completely for each other? The night sky over Manhattan blazed with light. Yet to Serena Martinez, it felt like a maze, every glimmer hiding an unseen snare. Joseph's phone rang repeatedly as the helicopter touched down atop Anderson Tower. He listened silently, his face darkening with every word. "We can't go home," he said quickly, voice taut as a drawn wire. Victor made his move. "One of our Long Island warehouses was hit." And what?" Serena's voice trembled. "They took Maria." The name sent a chill down her spine. Maria, the woman who had cared for her in the Hudson estate, the only person Serena had ever believed capable of kindness in Joseph's shadowed world. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Maria's the most loyal person you have. You once said she saved your life during the 2016 raid. That's precisely why Victor wants her." Joseph replied, eyes glinting with quiet fury. "He knows if he touches someone I love, I'll have to come to him. What are you going to do? Get you somewhere safe and then—" "No." Serena cut him off, her gaze fierce. "I'm not running anymore. This isn't just your war, Joseph. They came for me for what's buried in my father's past. I won't sit still and watch others die because of the blood I carry." Joseph stared at her gray eyes softening with reluctant admiration. "You know I can never say no to you." Serena smiled faintly, a fragile curve of defiance. "Then don't try." At 2 a.m, in the fortified basement of Anderson Tower, a holographic map of Manhattan glowed blue against the concrete walls. The security team stood at attention, their faces carved in focus. Joseph faced the display, his tone calm but edged with command. "Maria's being held in a warehouse near Brooklyn's docks." Victor chose it for the escape routes. He pointed to several red markers, at least 20 armed men. "We enter from 2 sides." "Serena, you're with me. You can't be serious," said Yeppe, his most trusted lieutenant. "She's not trained for this." "She's not a civilian anymore," Joseph replied coolly. "She's the reason this war exists." Serena said nothing, but her spine straightened. Fear, anger, and resolve tangled into something dangerous, a force that pulled her forward even as her heart raced. The convoy of black SUVs sliced through the rain-slick streets. Droplets streaked the windows like a clock ticking each second, drawing them closer to the storm ahead. Serena sat beside Joseph in silence. His hand rested on her knee. No words reassurance, just a quiet promise. "If it costs me everything, I'll still protect you." When the car stopped at the docks, Joseph turned and clipped an earpiece onto her. "When I give the signal, stay behind the crates. Don't move until I tell you. And if you can't tell me in time," he smiled faintly, a sad, haunting curve, "then remember this. You made me believe some things are worth losing my soul for." She didn't have time to answer before the headlights went out and the darkness swallowed them whole. The Brooklyn warehouse was old, reeking of oil and rust. Serena followed Joseph through rows of containers, her heart thundering in her chest. Their footsteps splashed softly against the wet floor. Left side, Yeppe's whisper crackled through the calm 3 guards' automatic weapons. Joseph signaled once. 2 shots cracked through the air, sharp, clean final. The bodies fell before they could scream. Serena froze. She had never seen this side of him cold, precise, merciless, more shadow than man. They reached the main door. A slit of yellow light spilled through along with laughter and a voice she recognized instantly. Victor Kozlov. He'll come, Victor rasped in his thick Eastern European accent. Anderson never lets his woman die alone. Be ready to welcome him. Joseph's finger tightened on the trigger, but Serena caught his hand. Let me. He frowned, but she slipped through the side entrance before he could protest, pulling a compact pistol from her coat. The air smelled of gasoline and sweat. Maria sat bound to a chair, her silver hair hanging limp. Victor lounged on a wooden crate, a cigarette glowing between his fingers. It's fascinating, he murmured. Even the strongest men crumble when you touch the ones they love. Serena stepped into the light. Then let's see how you handle someone who isn't afraid to burn. Victor turned, surprise flashing in his eyes, before curving into a smirk. Ah, the Black Rose returns. Your game ends tonight, Victor. Oh no, he purred. It only begins. Do you know why I chose you, Serena? Because you're the child your father tried to erase the secret both the Andersons and the Martinez family wanted buried. You're the perfect embodiment of their sins. Serena didn't lower her gun. And you think I'll let myself be used again? You don't have a choice. He drew his weapon and aimed it at Maria. If you shoot, she dies. Serena's hands trembled. Her pulse roared in her ears. Don't. Joseph's voice cut through the air as he lunged into the room, gun blazing. The sound shattered the silence, and chaos erupted. Bullets rained. Serena dove behind a crate, heat searing past her cheek, screams gunfire, the metallic clang of ricochets, a storm of death. Serena. Stay down, Joseph shouted. But then she saw Maria being dragged toward the stairs. Instinct overtook fear. She ran. Serena Joseph's voice followed, desperate, but she was gone. Maria was shoved up a metal staircase toward the mezzanine. Serena followed her shoulder. Throbbing gun, shaking in her grip. Maria? She gasped. Maria turned eyes wide with terror. Run, Serena! It's a trap! The gunfire came first, a bullet slicing the air beside her. Serena ducked. Victor stood at the end of the corridor, smiling like the devil. Brave girl, he said. Just like your father. Serena fired back the bullet, grazing his cheek. Victor laughed and fired again. One shot found its mark. Pain exploded in her shoulder. She fell blood hot against her skin. Victor approached slowly, the predator savoring the moment. Do you know why your father ran? He hissed. Because he killed someone. And Joseph Anderson merely cleaned up the mess. You're lying. No. He killed the woman Edward Anderson loved. That's why Joseph hates your name. Serena's vision blurred, pain, disbelief, grief all crashing at once. She couldn't tell which truth to believe anymore. Now you see, Victor said, voice low and cruel. You were born to be their punishment. He raised his gun, but before the shot came, another body slammed into hers, Joseph. The bullet hit his chest. Joseph Serena screamed, catching him as he fell. Blood soaked her hands, warm and terrifyingly real. Joseph's breathing came shallow, labored. Are you hurt? You idiot, she sobbed. Why would you do that? Because I promised to protect you. He forced a weak smile. And I never break my promises. Victor aimed again, but gunfire erupted from behind. Yeppe and the strike team stormed in, bullets slicing through the air. Victor took 2 rounds to the chest, staggered and toppled over the railing, his body hitting the concrete below with a final hollow sound. The chaos faded, leaving only smoke, blood, and rain. 3 days later, New York Presbyterian Hospital. Joseph Anderson lay motionless under white sheets, a scar running across his chest. Machines beeped softly beside him. Serena sat at his bedside, fingers intertwined with his. Outside, morning fog draped the city like a thin veil. When his eyes fluttered open, Serena exhaled a sound between a laugh and a sob. "You're alive," she whispered. Disappointed. His voice was a rasp, yet his lips curved faintly. She laughed through her tears. "I don't know who else could drive me crazy if you weren't." Joseph squeezed her hand weakly. "You've been crying for 2 days. You deserved it." "I know." He paused, breath shaky. "But there's something you need to know." Victor lied. "Your father didn't kill anyone." "The woman he mentioned was my mother." Serena froze. "My father found out about her affair with Miguel Martinez, she says." Continued, his voice thin but steady. "He ordered them both dead. Miguel escaped. I learned the truth years later, but I couldn't tell you. If I did, you'd hate me." Her eyes filled again. "You've carried your father's sin all this time. I didn't want their past to destroy us too." Serena pressed her palm over his chest, feeling the faint rhythm beneath the bandages. "You don't understand, Joseph. I never hated you. I only hated fate." A fragile smile touched his lips. "Then stay. Don't let the past decide what we become." Serena leaned forward and kissed his forehead, her voice trembling. "Only if you promise not to leave me first." "I promise." Outside, dawn broke over the Hudson. Sunlight spilled across the glass towers, washing away the city's haze. Manhattan looked peaceful again, like it had never known blood or fire. But inside that quiet hospital room, 2 souls still bore their scars of body and of heart, between life and death. Serena understood their love had crossed into something new, no longer a gentle dream, but a vow forged in pain, sealed with forgiveness. She tightened her grip on his hand and whispered like a prayer to the morning light. "If love is a battlefield, then I'd rather fight beside you than survive alone on the other side." Rain fell over Manhattan. Not a downpour, just a steady cold drizzle, as if the sky itself hadn't yet washed away the remnants of the violent night before. In the hospital room, the smell of antiseptic mixed with the faint fragrance of white lilies someone had brought, softening the air's chill. Serena sat beside the bed, her fingers entwined, eyes fixed on the steady rhythm of the heart monitor. Joseph Anderson was still unconscious, his face pale under the muted light, and his dark lashes cast shadows across his cheekbones. Her chest tightened with fear, tenderness, and anger whenever she looked at him. The door opened quietly. Mrs. Harlow stepped in her coat, soaked through silver hair clinging to her forehead. Relief and worry mingled in her eyes. "Is he any better?" she asked softly. "He's alive," Serena murmured, her voice hoarse from sleepless nights, "if that is better." Mrs. Harlow sighed, setting her scarf on the table. "I once saw Mr. Anderson's father lying in a bed like this. And now, looking at Joseph, I see history repeating itself. Except for one thing." "What's different?" "This time, someone stayed by his side." Serena said nothing. Mrs. Harlow took her hand gently. "He didn't tell me, but I know. When Victor attacked, Joseph called me and said one thing before the line went dead. 'If I don't make it back, tell her I never regretted a single moment.'" Tears slipped silently down Serena's cheeks. "He was wrong, Mrs. Harlow. I'm not worth that kind of sacrifice. No one ever is, my dear. Love isn't about worthiness. It's about choice." The words fell softly, a gentle wound that hurt more for its truth. Serena bowed her head and let the tears come. 3 days later, Joseph woke. He opened his eyes to a gray dawn mist hanging below the window. Serena had fallen asleep with her head resting on his arm, her hair tumoring across the sheets. He moved slightly and the pain in his chest flared. She stirred, lifted her head, and when their eyes met, every word she had meant to say dissolved. "You scared me half to death," she whispered, voice trembling. A weak smile curved his lips. "I still owe you dinner on the rooftop, remember?" She laughed through her tears. "You can't joke right now, Joseph. I'm not joking." He lifted a hand to touch her face. "I'm still here, and I'll stay here, until you tell me not to." She pleaded softly. "Don't say things like that as if you could disappear." He didn't argue. He held her hand in his steady, warm alive, as if that alone could silence all the fears between them. By afternoon, when sunlight began to break through the clouds, Joseph insisted on being discharged. He said they'll think I'm weak while buttoning his shirt, ignoring Serena's glare. And weakness is the most dangerous thing in my world. You almost died less than a week ago, and you're already planning to throw yourself back into that world. The battlefield never left me, Serena. She exhaled sharply. And what about me? You expect me to wait for you again? His eyes softened. No, this time you're coming with me. She blinked. You're serious? You said you wouldn't run anymore, he replied quietly. Then stand with me and end this together. That evening, Manhattan braced for another storm, not of rain, but of reckoning. A small headline flashed across the news. The Bronx fire destroyed the warehouse linked to Viktor Kozlov's network. Anderson Holdings is suspected. Joseph stood by his office window, the golden light cutting across his sharp features. Victor's dead, he said, but his men aren't. They've regrouped under a new name, the Black Sun. If we don't uproot them altogether, more blood will spill. Serena stepped closer. What are you going to do? Erase their empire, every account, every handler, every shadow deal. He turned to her. And I need you. Why me? Because you know what I don't. Your father, the Brooklyn Bridge Project, and the secret Victor was after. AA's hidden account named Aurelia holds records of every criminal transaction from both generations of syndicates. Serena's breath caught. You think my father has it? I think he hid it. And he meant for you to be the one to finish what he started. 2 days later, they flew to Washington, D.C., where Miguel Martinez, her father, still lived under the name Michael Harris. When Serena entered the small wooden house, he was already waiting on the porch, his gaze deep and resigned. I knew you'd come, he said quietly. Guilt never stays buried. It only waits for courage to face it. Joseph inclined his head respectfully. Sir, we need your help. Victor's gone, but his remnants are rising again. They're after something you once hid. Miguel was silent for a long time before opening a drawer and taking out a small steel box. His hands trembled as he placed it on the table. Inside is a copy of the Aurelia data drive. If you open it, every secret in the underworld will surface, not just Victor's, but those who once saved us, including your father Joseph. Joseph's jaw tightened. I have no father left to protect only her. Miguel looked at his daughter, pride and sorrow interwoven in his gaze. Serena, are you certain? Once you open it, there's no going back. She nodded. If this is the only way to end the cycle of sin, then I'm ready. He exhaled slowly. Then go. But remember, every truth demands a price. That night, they returned to Manhattan. In the penthouse on the 80th floor, Serena set the hard drive on the desk. The city lights shimmered in the glass, casting golden reflections across the room. Joseph stood behind her, his hands resting on her shoulders, a silent vow. The system booted up. She typed the password. When access granted appeared, hundreds of files flooded the screen names. Offshore accounts, contracts, shadow alliances, enough evidence to collapse an empire. She turned to him. We're releasing it, he nodded. Not for revenge, for redemption. Serena smiled faintly, blood and blossoms. The world may need both to bloom again. By morning, the news exploded. Underground banking network collapses. Anderson Holdings implicated. Global agencies reopen investigation into decade-old Brooklyn Bridge corruption. Joseph was summoned. Reporters swarmed. But for the first time, he didn't hide. His voice was calm and resolute under 100 flashing cameras at the press conference. Justice may come late, he said. But late is better than never. I, Joseph Anderson, admit that my father was part of a financial crime syndicate. Today, I end his legacy not with silence, but with truth. At the back of the hall, Serena watched him, not as the tycoon who ruled Manhattan, but as a man who had set himself ablaze in the light of honesty. It was beautiful and unbearably tragic. When the chaos finally quieted that night, Serena returned to the penthouse. Joseph sat by the window, a glass of wine in hand, city lights flickering in his eyes. You've lost everything, she said softly. No, he answered, turning to her with a faint smile. I only lost what was never real. What's real? I still have. Serena frowned slightly. And what's that? He placed a hand over her abdomen, his voice gentle. I can hear 2 heartbeats, yours and our child's. She froze, tears welling. You knew I've seen the way you touch your stomach when you're scared. Don't think I have noticed. She leaned into him, laughing through her tears. This world is exhausting, Joseph. But if our child comes into it, I want them to know that love can heal. Even what's been broken beyond repair. He kissed her forehead, whispering, "They'll never grow up in the dark, not like we did." Outside Manhattan glowed towers bathed in golden light, reflecting two silhouettes by the window. Small against the city, but enough to hold an entire world between them. The next morning, the sky was clear. The final rains had passed, leaving the air soft and clean. Serena woke to sunlight spilling across Joseph's sleeping face. She padded onto the balcony. The black roses she had planted the previous spring were in full bloom, their petals shimmering crimson under the dawn half-blood, half-beauty. She smiled and brushed a petal with her fingertip. Blood and blossoms? They coexist after all. From behind, Joseph wrapped his arms around her, murmuring, "I used to think blood only brought pain, but you've made me see some scars are beautiful enough to keep." Serena turned and kissed him light as breath, because those scars taught us how to love. They stood together watching Manhattan awake in sunlight, kissing the petals the city reborn in gold. The past and the present no longer clash. They exist side by side, two souls, two hearts, and a new beginning born from ashes. And somewhere in the morning, wind, a single black rose petal drifted down to the balcony, leaving behind a faint red trace, a quiet witness to a love that had bled, burned, and still managed to bloom in the light of dawn. Autumn in Manhattan carried a strange kind of beauty, as if the entire city was learning how to breathe again after the chaos of summer. From the highest floor of Anderson Tower, Serena gazed down at the sea of lights unfurling through the streets, where golden lamps shimmered like 1,000 fallen stars. Her belly had grown rounder. She cradled it gently, instinctively, protecting something fragile and sacred. Joseph had just returned from a late meeting, his shirt's slightly rumpled tie loosened, yet his eyes still held that gleam of quiet purpose, as if amidst all the contracts and conflicts, he had found something worth living for. "You're still awake." His voice was low, husky, and exhausting. "I heard the planes outside," she said softly. "It's strange. Every time I hear that sound, I remember the day you flew me out of Chicago." Joseph smiled faintly, stepping forward to wrap his arms around her from behind. "That day I was terrified you'd run. Now, I'm only afraid of losing you in another way." Serena leaned back into him, feeling the rhythm of his heartbeat against her spine. "You haven't lost anything, Joseph. Even if the whole world turns against you, I'll still be here." "I know." His tone deepened, quieter now. "But sometimes you don't have to leave to lose someone. You have to stop believing in the same thing." The words stung. Serena turned to face him, searching his expression in the dim light. "What are you talking about?" Joseph said nothing at first. He walked to the desk, took a white envelope, and set it down before her. "It's a formal request from the Department of Justice," he said evenly. "They want me to testify as a key witness against the international laundering network, the one tied to my father, and Victor's organization." Serena's breath caught. "If you agree, everything we've built will be investigated." "All of it," he replied, voice heavy, "including the shell companies, the charities, and investment funds under your name." Silence fell between them. Outside, the wind howled faintly against the glass, carrying the whisper of fate. Serena finally spoke. "Are you going to accept I can't live in the shadows anymore?" Joseph said quietly. "Not when we're bringing a child into this world." She looked at him long and hard, the man who once swore to never bow to anyone. But now, in his eyes, she saw something more profound than defiance, exhaustion, and the fragile longing for peace. "You've sacrificed too much," she whispered. "If we let go now, everything will crumble. They won't let you walk away." "I know." His gaze didn't waver. "But I'd rather be destroyed by truth than protected by lies." Serena turned away, tears stinging her eyes. She knew he was right, and yet her heart trembled. Blood had been the price every time they tried to do the right thing, and she feared this time it might cost her everything. The next morning, Joseph left early for a meeting with the federal attorneys. Serena stood by the window, watching him enter the car, surrounded by his escort. When the black SUVs disappeared into the mist, unease settled in her chest like a shadow. By noon, a package arrived. No sender, no return address. Inside was a single black rose and a note written in jagged ink. "If Anderson speaks, your child will never be born." Serena froze, the words blurred before her eyes. Her hand flew instinctively to her stomach. She didn't need to guess who sent it. Remnants of the black sun had returned. She grabbed her phone, dialing Joseph's number. No answer. She tried again once, twice, 3 times. Silence. "Oh, God!" she whispered, panic rising. Clutching the letter, she ran toward the elevator. On Joseph's orders, the 2 bodyguards who usually stood watch were gone, reassigned that morning to give her more freedom. Freedom. The word felt cruelly ironic now. That afternoon, Manhattan devoured its own light. The skies broke open, rain pouring down in gray sheets. Serena drove through the storm, heading for the building where Joseph's meeting was. The wet streets reflected the red of traffic lights like veins of blood across the city. And then the explosion. The ground shook violently. A blast tore through the parking levels beneath the tower. Fire roared upward. Sirens wailed. Joseph Serena screamed, running toward the chaos. But smoke and screams swallowed her. The acrid smell of burning metal stung her lungs. Still, she pushed forward. "Joseph! Where are you?" A strong hand seized her arm, dragging her back. Yeppe, Joseph's head of security. His face was blackened with soot. "Serena. Get back. The system's been rigged. They wanted both of you dead." "Where is he?" Yeppe's gaze flickered toward the inferno in the center of the garage. Serena followed it and understood. Her knees gave way. No, it can't be. 3 hours later, the hospital overflowed with victims. Serena sat in the waiting area, trembling, clothes streaked with ash and dust. Police came and went, asking questions she couldn't hear. Then a nurse approached her, face grave. Serena rose, barely breathing. "We found Mr. Anderson in the lower level," the nurse said gently. "Severe injuries, heavy blood loss, but he's alive." Serena staggered forward, following her through the hall. When she saw him, pale, bandaged, breathing shallowly, her heart broke all over again. "Joseph," she whispered, gripping his hand. "Can you hear me?" His eyelids fluttered. His lips parted weakly. "You and the baby. Safe. We're fine. But you have to fight, do you hear me?" He tried to smile, just barely. "I thought I'd stopped believing in anything. But you changed even the fate I didn't deserve." Her tears fell onto his hand. "You're not allowed to leave me, Joseph. Not now. Not ever." 4 days later, he was still unconscious. The world outside was chaos. Police investigations. Headlines, conspiracies. Rumors swirled that the explosion had been orchestrated by surviving members of Victor's syndicate. Serena stayed beside him through it all. She spoke to him daily, her voice soft, steady, desperate. "Did you know," she whispered one night, resting her hand on her belly, "our baby already reacts to music. I played Chopin, and it kicked. Maybe it'll be like you, someone who can make hearts tremble." She smiled through tears, laying her head beside his arm. That night, Joseph dreamed. He stood in a vast field of black roses under a silver fog. Serena appeared in a flowing white dress through the mist with a tender and sad smile. "You chose the path of light," her voice echoed, distant and clear. "But light always comes with a cost." He reached for her, but she dissolved into mist, leaving only the scent of black roses. When Joseph awoke, the morning sun had just begun to rise. Serena sat by the window, reading a file, unaware. Still awake, he murmured. She turned and the papers slipped from her hands. "You're awake." He squeezed her fingers weakly. "I heard you every word, even in the dark. What did you dream about?" "You," he said faintly, "walking through a field of black roses. Then you vanished. I thought I'd lost you forever." Serena smiled through her tears. "You didn't. I'm right here. And we still have a long road ahead." Joseph turned his gaze toward the sunlight spilling through the window, a soft glow painting the sheets gold. "No one will ever touch you or our child again," he whispered. "I swear it." 2 months later, when his wounds had healed, they left Manhattan for good. The house by the sea in Maine was quiet, a wooden cottage surrounded by roses of every color except black. "You didn't plant them?" Serena asked as they walked through the garden. Joseph smiled faintly. "I buried them. Over there." He pointed to a patch of earth near the fence. "Black roses used to mean death and revenge. Now I want them to rest." Serena nodded, resting her hands over her belly. "Maybe our child will grow up in a world where flowers are just flowers." "And love isn't a wound," Joseph added softly, his eyes warm as they met hers. She smiled. "Do you think one day peace will really stay?" He didn't answer immediately. He wrapped his arms around her and let the sea breeze move through her hair. "I don't know. But if the storm comes again, I'd rather face it with you than live safely without you." Serena looked up at him, and in her eyes shone something fierce and luminous, a faith she thought she'd lost long ago. Beyond them, the horizon burned red with sunset, a reminder that every dusk, no matter how beautiful, is only the beginning of another night. But this time, Serena no longer feared the dark, because she knew that as long as Joseph was there, no matter the storm, she would always find the scent of peace, faint, resilient, eternal. And in the far corner of the garden where Joseph had buried the black roses, a single green sprout had emerged, small but unyielding. Proof that the most beautiful things sometimes bloom from ashes and scars, quietly but forever. The sea off Maine in May shimmered with a rare blue clear deep. Endless, the blue that made one believe even the waves could wash away even sins. From the window of their small coastal villa, Serena watched the sun rise over the horizon. Morning light spilled like golden silk, wrapping the world in a tenderness she once thought existed in dreams. Beside her, Joseph held their newborn son. His large hands cradled the baby with a gentleness that seemed almost sacred. The sunlight danced across his dark hair, turning him into a sculpture made of light, strong, solitary, yet endlessly warm. "Do you see it?" Joseph murmured, his voice still rough from sleepless nights. "He has your eyes, Serena." Serena smiled, pressing a soft kiss to the baby's forehead. "And your frown, just like you when you read the morning paper." Joseph chuckled, then fell silent, the silence of a man who had traded an empire for a moment like this. "I used to think my life would end with gunfire, darkness, betrayal. But the ending is here with you and our son in these arms." Serena touched his cheek, her eyes bright. "It's not an ending, Joseph. It's the beginning." By afternoon, the scent of salt had drifted through every corner of the house. Serena arranged white roses and sprigs of lavender in a glass vase. There were no black roses anymore, the flowers of death and memory. She had learned to love peace and the fragile warmth of light. Joseph came in holding a few newspapers. The headline read, "Joseph Anderson, the man who made the underworld kneel by choosing the light." He set the paper down, watching her. "They're calling me a traitor to the elite, a man who cleaned a dirty system with his own blood. Do you think... Did I do the right thing?" Serena didn't hesitate. "You did what no one else dared to do. You proved that power isn't fear, it's courage. The world needs people who dare to change it. And that's who you are." Joseph's gaze softened, full of emotion. "I wouldn't have made it this far if it weren't for you." She smiled faintly. "No, Joseph. You saved yourself long before I came. I just reminded you why life was worth saving." That night, under a full moon, Serena walked into the garden. The sound of waves merged with the wind, carrying the scent of salt and sand. Beneath the silver light, her rose garden glowed softly, white blossoms trembling in the breeze. But in the middle of them, she noticed one black rose blooming solitary. Radiant like a memory reborn, Joseph came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "You see it too. I thought you buried them all," she whispered. "Maybe the wind carried a seed back." Serena smiled gently. "Like our past, it never disappears completely. It only changes form." Joseph pressed a kiss to her hair. "If there's any past I'd keep, it's you." She turned to face him. "I want to tell our son everything, the black roses, the blood, the light. I want him to know that real love isn't about avoiding darkness, but walking through it. And loving despite fear," he added softly. Yes, she said with a small knowing smile, and loving even when you might lose and believing even when it hurts. A week later, Joseph was invited to speak at an international conference in New York rebuilding trust in a post-crisis financial world. Serena went with him. She never imagined she would return to Manhattan, the city that began everything, the town that once made her tremble at every sudden sound in the night. When their car stopped in front of the Plaza Hotel, Serena looked out the window. The city was still dazzling, still restless, still impossibly proud. But to her, Manhattan was no longer a nightmare. It was proof that people can survive anything if they love the right person. Joseph took her hand as they entered the hall. Camera flashes flared around them. He stood calm and composed in his simple gray suit, no longer the man in the shadows, but someone honest, someone reborn. When he stepped onto the stage, the room fell silent. His eyes searched for Serena among the crowd. She was smiling at him, the same smile that once pulled him out of the dark.
There was a time, he began, when I believed power was the only way to earn respect. I was wrong. Power isn't the ability to make people fear you. It's the strength to make them believe. Not a sound moved in the hall. I lost everything once: reputation, fortune, trust. But in the ruins, I found the one thing worth keeping: love. And I realized that you stop fearing anything when you have someone to protect. His gaze rested on Serena. Through her gentleness and courage, that woman taught me that no light lasts forever unless you learn to kindle it yourself. So if I stand here today, it's because of one thing: her faith. Applause thundered through the hall. Serena bit her lip, tears spilling quietly, her heart full and light. That night, they returned to their old penthouse, once filled with blood and smoke, now restored to calm and warmth. No gunpowder, no fear, only the faint scent of flowers. Serena stepped out onto the balcony, gazing down at the glowing city. "Do you see it, Joseph? Manhattan hasn't changed." "But we have." He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her. "I never thought we'd come back here with peace in our hearts." "Because you forgot," she said softly. "Flowers still bloom even in darkness." He smiled, holding her tighter. "You always knew how to make the world beautiful, Serena Martinez." She turned to him, her eyes tender. "And you, Joseph Anderson, proved that even a man who once ruled with blood can learn to love with his whole heart." They kissed beneath the city lights, not out of passion, but peace. A kiss between two souls who had walked through storms and chosen to stay, knowing that love was the one thing they could never lose. The next morning, Serena woke early. Joseph was still asleep, one hand resting protectively on their baby's cradle. She sat at the desk and began to write a letter, not to anyone else but to her past self. If you're reading this, it means you survived. You dared to love even when afraid. You dared to believe even after betrayal. And you dared to forgive others and yourself. Remember this: no love is perfect. But some loves born of blood and tears can still be the light guiding you home. When the world feels like it's falling apart, don't run from the darkness. Walk through it with the one who's worth it. She folded the letter, placing it in a small box with a single dried black rose. A memory, a symbol, a reminder that no ending is ever truly an end. That afternoon, they went down to the shore. Joseph carried their son Serena by his side. The wind carried the taste of salt, the rhythm of the waves steady as a heartbeat. "Who do you think he'll take after?" she asked. "Both of us," Joseph said, smiling. "He'll have your heart and my will, someone who knows how to love and how to fight for it." Serena leaned her head on his shoulder. The sunset wrapped them in gold, a portrait of peace earned through pain. The last light burned crimson across the horizon, like a scar across the waves. Yet it wasn't tragic, only breathtaking, as if the universe was smiling upon two souls finally finding each other. And so from a single black rose, a love was born. One that walked through blood, fire, and shadow, only to bloom at last in the light, for it is only when you dare to love, to believe, and to forgive that even wounds can blossom into flowers on the heart. If you love dramatic romance stories like this, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and leave a comment below so you won't miss the following exciting chapters.